Hey guys, this is week 4, Monday's video. For the next 2 weeks, I'm only going to do one video because we have 2 full weeks with this next paper. And then into the final portfolio, I'll probably only do one video per day, just as you guys seem to need it in your writing. So let's just review where we're at in the course and what we have coming up. You have your midterm grades back. Again, the grade reports don't count for like on STAR or on your transcripts or anything, and they're just a way to communicate how you're progressing in this class, what you need to work on, etc. Do follow those steps to communicating with me. I'm going to also follow them rigorously, so just make it easier on yourself and try to follow those directions. Also, I'm noticing a lot of you are either not watching the videos or not having a chance to watch them. This counts as like in-course instruction, so treat it like you're going to class, okay? So every day you should be waking up, checking online for the YouTube videos, and checking for the free writes, and following the syllabus here, okay? I don't know how else to communicate with you guys. I can't send you individual emails every day. This is a class, so treat it as a class that you would for like the fall or the spring semesters. Okay. So for this week, Monday, I'm going to introduce the stakeholder paper. That's the last paper we're going to do for the course. And we're going to look at the assignment sheet, the rubric for that. And I had you read one of the 2 samples that are already online. Your writing response is due by 4 p.m. today. How is a stakeholder research paper different from research papers you've written? What are its rhetorical aims? So this you should not really Google. You should just read the stakeholder sample research paper and think in the past what you have written and how this one is different. What are the goals of this paper? One of the 2. Okay, so that takes care of that. Let's jump on over to the assignment sheet. This is already online, as most of the assignment sheets are before they're assigned. So let's just go over this quickly. I expect you to read these documents in full after I go over them. So the stakeholder research paper is like a research paper. It's something that you're probably more familiar with. I know a lot of you struggle with the rhetorical analysis, trying to understand the genre, and you still have time to polish up your papers for the final portfolio. But the stakeholder research paper is basically an argumentative paper where you're presenting multiple sides of an issue and you are claiming a stake in it as well, okay? So I'll show you an outline of the specific form later, but for the purposes of this assignment sheet, let's just try to think of it as a research paper where you're taking a side on an issue, but you're also fully presenting the sides of that issue, okay? So normally there are 2 sides. There's like a pro and con. If we think about some tired topics like abortion, and I've noted a few down here we're going to talk about, there are normally pros and cons, and sometimes it seems somewhat black and white. The grayness presents a more interesting paper and a more interesting argument. So we'll talk about that in upcoming videos. But the genre of this is a research paper, but it's not quite as formal as a research paper because you, the author, are your opinion is integrated into it, and also some of your personal experience. So that's where the narrative paper is going to come into play as well, where we're going to go back a little bit to showing and telling language. So what you've learned will help you in this paper. The audience, obviously, it's technically me, but you are trying to persuade or convince the opposing side. So you'll have people who agree with you on this a certain issue, and then you'll have people who oppose. So you're presenting information and facts and statistics, etc., whatever you want to research, to convince the people who disagree with me on this issue to at least listen to what I'm saying, okay? The organization. Of course, you'll have introduction, body, conclusion, works cited page in MLA format, but I'll present a couple of outlines for you guys. And again, I want you to adopt one of these outlines because I'm basically building in structure to your paper. I'm doing some of the work for you. So please do take advantage of that. All right. For this list, tired topics are essentially topics that people have written about so much, either in English classes or just in journals or op-eds or whatever. They are too big there's too much information on them to really cover in a 1,200 to 1,500 word paper. So I've listed some here. And for these, generally, I will not allow you to write about these topics. So if you try to write about this topic, I'm gonna dissuade you from doing so. And also, I'm going to send back the paper. Most likely, I'm going to say choose a different topic. So just don't invest a lot of time in this. I'm telling you straight up front. There's a very, very rare chance that you will be allowed to write about one of these. And it's mostly for your benefit. Again, these are issues that are too big. They're too exhausted to cover eloquently and effectively in 1,200 to 1,500 words. If you were writing like a dissertation, a book, or even a thesis on one of these, then you could tackle it and really get into the sides. But for the purposes of this assignment, these are just too big. You're not going to be able to represent them well enough, even if you're the best writer. It's just you don't have enough words on the page to do so. So abortion, gun control, death penalty, legalization of marijuana, student athletes getting paid, climate change, GMOs, immigration restrictions, euthanasia, animal abuse / animal rights, and political candidates. So all of these things, again, are just, they're too much to cover for this paper. And I know they're hot button issues, and maybe your high school teachers even encourage you to write about them. But again, for the purposes of this paper, to really present convincing arguments, you have to cover the sides. And to even just summarize and cover the sides would take 3 to 4 papers. Okay? So some things you could write about. You have 2 examples in your papers. I'm going to guide you with the free writes, so please do the free writes on time. I'm going to guide you with the free writes with my feedback to those, and also with your writing responses. So your writing response, not the one that's due today, but the one that's due Wednesday, is basically a sample proposal. So you're saying, I want to research this and why. Here's a little bit of what other people have said, aka the stakeholders, and I want to add this information to it. So writing response 7, you're basically presenting a proposal, and this will have, I'll provide more feedback for this document to help guide you toward a successful paper. All right, assessment. So something that the issue you choose should be meaningful to you. For example, one of my students last semester, she wrote about the coal mining industry in West Virginia because her dad was a coal miner. So she presented some controversy with West Virginia coal mining. It's very local. She did an interview even with her dad. So, but she also had 4 to 6 sources because the minimum amount of sources is 4 to 6. You must do research for this paper, again, 4 to 6 sources. Some of you did not do any research for the rhetorical analysis, and that's not completing the assignment, okay? So please, I'm going to take you through how to research again, specifically for this paper. Again, watch these videos, and you should be fine. All right, a clear tentative research question. So this I will have free writes about / your writing response. A clear thesis statement. That's going to be in your final draft once you have figured out what you're arguing. All right, multiple perspectives. These are your stakeholders, appropriate citations, clear writing, 1,200, 1,500 words. And then this is all the same, except this is the only difference. 4 to 6 credible, well-supported sources. So something like IMDb or like Wikipedia will not count for this paper. You can still go to those places, but just do not use them as credible, well-supported sources in your final paper. Again, your paper is an argument to me that you have adopted / mastered these skills in order to go on to 102. Because in 102, you're going to be doing even more research. So we have to work out the bugs of the research situation now. So when you enter 102, you're not falling behind immediately. Okay, the rubric for this. Again, this is online. It's still under the same place. Coursework, papers, stakeholder research paper. All right, this has all the documents. Same thing with titles, creative and specific. Some of you are getting pretty good at titles. I keep adding suggestions for how to improve them. The introduction for this should be a showing paragraph. It should be a scene about your topic or your issue, okay? So if you're writing about maybe climate change or the fishing industry or something like that, then you might have a scene of why you chose this topic, why you're invested in it. So an introduction for that paper about maybe climate change or oil companies or fracking or whatever might be you and your dad were fishing on a lake and something happened that, like, you saw a dead fish and you started a conversation about the effects of this industry or whatever. Okay, so something that is more narrative-like is in your introduction. It should introduce your paper's issue, not necessarily throughout time, oil companies have killed wildlife or something like that. That is obvious, it's boring, and it's not personalized. The research, again, 4 to 6 credible sources. They must have in-text citations, otherwise it's plagiarism. You all watched the video on plagiarism. I've assigned it. It's on the syllabus. So if I see it in a final draft, then you will not pass the class. So be very serious about citing your sources. Even if you don't get it correctly, try to do an in-text citation, because if I see that you're trying, at least I know it's not intentional plagiarism, and I can help you with it. All right, arrangement. This again is the outline organization, which I'll talk about later. Stakeholders, you have 2 documents to read for tomorrow. They're already up online, and those will help specify what stakeholders are. The conclusion is the same thing that we've been working with all semester. A solution, a consequence, a prediction of this issue. If the environment keeps, or if the coal mining industry keeps going the way it's going, X will happen. Okay, voice. So this is, you can read here, just keeping it, don't put second person, use active voice, not passive voice, etc. This is proofreading stuff, works cited, and then the length 12 to 1500. Okay, so that's for all of that. The thing I had you do for this paper is, as you can see with the sample papers, I asked you to read one of them, and by 4 o'clock tonight, submit your writing response 6. So here, the author started with some statistics and kind of the introduction to how media portrays girls, or how the media portrayal of women affects images of self-beauty, self-love, etc. So then she goes into the 2 sides of the issue. How does Cosmopolitan represent beauty versus something like Elle Girl, or even like a health-based magazine. All right, so it's healthy versus unhealthy. So then she says a little bit toward the end of her paper, she goes into her own experience. This is what makes it a stakeholder paper rather than something like just a sample research paper. A stakeholder paper is where you as an author take a claim or make a stake in the issue. So when you choose an issue or you choose a topic, it should be something that affects you, and it cannot be a tired topic. I just mentioned that. So she has been affected by she felt pressure to lose weight, as it says here, change her makeup and hair. So she tried to buy into these media and productions of beauty, these kind of false productions of cosmopolitan beauties, etc. So she should expand a little bit here, but it is a pretty well supported paper that explains the 2 sides of the issue, or the 2 stakeholders, and her personal stake. And she makes an overall judgment call based on who she's agreeing with, like in the research, and what the opposition's saying, and her own personal values. Okay, so there are 3 main pieces to this. The people who are taking your same side, I call them my team, the opposition, the people who are opposing what you are claiming, and your own personal stake in the matter. Okay, and then she has a little conclusion paragraph here and her works cited. She has a lot of sources. I'm saying 4 to 6 minimum. Okay, so start working on that and stick around for Tuesday's video.